reading about in your local newspaper and watching on your television. And we go behind those stories and tell you what's really going on there. We give you the story behind the story. We read between the lines, all those cliches. And like we tell you every week, it's only our opinion, and you can accept or reject it. But obviously, we're going to have our say. You know, last week there was a mechanical problem here at the studio, and only about 15 minutes of our show got on the air, and it had nothing to do with anybody trying to censor anything. It just broke down, and so hopefully that won't happen again. And then we mentioned to you last week that our show again will be shown on prime time only on Tuesday night from 8 to 9 tonight. And on Friday it will be repeated, but we used to repeat it at 8:30 to 9:30, but we lost that time because new people are coming in and wanting prime time. So we now repeat our show from 3:30 to 4:30 on Friday afternoon. So it may be difficult for some of you who miss it on Tuesday to pick it up then, but that's all they could give us. Now also, our show is supposed to be shown continuously on flinttalk.com. You know, I was saying flintnews.com. It's flinttalk.com. And if you tune in there and you want to see it, I guess it's available anytime you want to look into it. So anyway, we apologize for last week, and hopefully it'll get on again this week, and the show will get on, I should say. But anyway, we have a number of things we want to talk about tonight, and as you know, there's been a lot of things in the newspaper this week, and we want to hit on some of those things. But we want to also go back to the subject we discussed last week so that we can make sure that it's understood, because we lost some of it. So we may talk about that a little this week, or in a short version of it. But we want to talk also about the issue of whether there should be some kind of legal repercussions against a local politician for misusing the criminal justice system to try to destroy the reputation of a political opponent. Is that what the criminal justice system's all about? Or is that what political elections are all about? The justice system is sacred, where we try to determine the truth, not political power. We want to discuss that case today. And of course, we want to talk about the charging of the councilwoman, Jackie Poplar, the Flint City Councilwoman, for extortion. She was put on a diversion program for allegedly extorting money from business people in order to get liquor licenses. She claims she didn't know it was wrong, and that she never knew it was wrong. I'm not so sure that's correct. I think there are people who told her it was wrong. We've talked to some of those people. She also blames the mayor. Yeah, I don't know how that happened. They've referred to the mayor on occasion as the devil the city council has, so she must be saying that the devil made her do it. The devil made her do it. But anyway, we want to discuss that. Jackie Poplar, I've known for not an awful long time, but she's a very nice person, and I was really upset to see this happen to her. And then I want to discuss this issue with the sheriff's department, where a deputy picked up a wounded police officer who had been shot in a shootout, and rushed him to the hospital, which was like 2 minutes away, rather than wait for an ambulance that wasn't available in the first place, and then was criticized for it. We want to discuss that and whether that criticism is justified or not. But I want to do a little bit of an update on last week's story about the Flint Board of Education, in our opinion, has been captured by this institutional racism, which we'll discuss with you in just a moment. And as a result, it's really harmful to the educational opportunities for our youngsters in the Flint school system. And here's a story, and you have to wonder about it. It was in this week's paper. It was in December 2nd. Today's the 4th, so it was Sunday's paper, right? No, Saturday's paper, I'm sorry. But here's the story. Besides the popular story, and we'll get to that in a minute, it says the Board of Education president moves child. Daughter transfers out of troubled Southwestern. And it says the 11th grade daughter of Flint Board of Education president has transferred to a private school, a move that's being questioned by some parents. She would not answer questions from the Flint Journal about her daughter's recent transfer out of Southwestern Academy, a school that has been plagued this year by parent and teachers' complaints about overcrowding and discipline problems. And it says Southwestern parent Rhonda Russi said she believes the president's action set a poor example. If you tell us that the school system is working, why would you sign your daughter out? Russi asked. We have to find out what's really going on in our school system for her to pull her child out. And I think that's a fair question. You know, if the child is pulled out of Southwestern, what is the reason? 11th grade child. You have to assume, from what you're reading here, that it's fair to assume, I should say, that it's a troubled school. It has safety problems there. She should say what it was for. She's a public official. She has an obligation to tell the other parents with kids at Southwestern if there's something she knows that they should also know, so they can make a responsible decision on whether they should keep their children in Southwestern or move them to a private school. They should be giving the same opportunity. I said last week that this board is guilty of what I consider institutional racism as they take the Flint school system into the future. You know, 85% Flint students are African American. We have a dropout rate of 50%. I'm not suggesting these school people are personally racist, but the system has built in racist functions in the school, which are harmful to our kids and have not been corrected and deserve correction and can be corrected with a lot of work. These are circumstances which have a great impact on our students' ability to learn. They become part of the school system itself. You know, do you really think that these things that I'll mention to you here in a few seconds, and I mentioned a little last week before we were cut off, do you think that these things would happen in Grand Blanc School District, Davis and Goodrich, Clisle, Swartz Creek, Fenton? Hey, well, you know, really, what do these schools' systems have that the Flint school doesn't have that permits this kind of activity? Well, there's the common denominator, or lack of a common denominator. Here's these schools are all in the county, and they're predominantly white. Well, let's look just for a moment at some of these activities and some of these drawbacks that create this institutionalizing of the racism in our schools. You know, first, why do you think people pull kids out of our Flint school system over the last 10 years to go to other private schools? The first thing they'll tell you is they're afraid to send their kids to school. We have an atmosphere of violence in the Flint school, and it continues to get worse. You know, and the schools are really unsafe. Buildings are falling down. Steps, floors, ceilings are in many schools are in various stages of disrepair. And we put our kids in harm's way with that. You've been in those schools. You can look from the outside and see what's happening to them. You know, many school basements are flooded. Roofs leak. All of this water is, you know, was a breeding ground for the black mold, which is very dangerous. And there is black mold in some of our schools. Some of these schools are infested with rats and mice. Poisons that are dispersed in the air that can do great harm to our children, even kill them in some cases, are laying around in our schools in violation of state law, which says they are not supposed to be there. No one's looking. A good example is what happened up at Northern High School a couple of weeks ago, where they found mercury spilled. And this is a dangerous poison that's distributed in the air. You know, no one knows how many other schools have the same problem. The failure to follow the law. And we have the issue of the buildings. We mentioned that. One of the school board members, Herbert Cleaves, to his credit, his schools continue crumbling. And he recognizes it should be dealt with. It's not good for the kids. They're falling down and get hurt in there. And then we have a hiring policy. It's outrageous. Hiring teachers, hiring administrators, hiring custodians and food people before their records are checked, in violation of state law. We have a law just passed last year that says every one of these people should be checked before they're hired. And you'll find that the Flint school system, here we have it here, board a step closer to tougher checks. They're talking about, this is all the result of the Milton Anthony fiasco. It says a tougher Flint school background check policy that still could allow some employees to start to work before a criminal record check is completed and moved closer to approval Tuesday. And they say, well, the reason we can't guarantee there's nothing wrong with them, we have to hire them before, is they said, listen to this. This is a fellow by the name of Paul Jordan's on the board. He says, you send the fingerprints out there, and then it's up to the FBI and these other entities. You don't have any control over how long it takes. Listen, when they found out that Milton and Anthony hadn't sent their fingerprints in, and the school board or the teachers union raised heck about it and made a demand on the school board for information on it, they sent them in immediately, and it came back in a week or two. The results were back in a week or two. This is a phony excuse. They're looking for you. You don't hire anybody. You don't hire a teacher, an administrator, a custodian, anybody in the schools if their records haven't been checked and they haven't been cleared, and that's according to state law. There's no excuse for that. So here they are trying to figure out ways to get around that protection we're supposed to have for our children. And then you hear year after year, this is not just this year, we heard it this year numerous times, but year after year after year, the schools are not provided the supplies and the equipment they need to run the schools. Today, December, beginning of December, there are schools that still don't have their supplies. And this is state money. It isn't like kids have to buy it. The schools are to provide it. With the money they get from the state, they get from the taxes they pay locally, it's required. And they still don't have them, year after year after year. This, impacts the ability of the kids to learn. And then, we've had these most recent problems. Well, we talk about the overcrowding of classes. Let me just digress for a minute. Those things, it's bad planning. Can't they figure out? If you've got 50 people in a class, what's going on here? They give the argument that they don't know how many kids are going to be in the class, how many are going to leave, how much money they're going to be short. Well, they can anticipate that, so that they not double what the case or the student load should be in a class, and that's what's happened this year. Here we have kids now being moved out of Southwestern, the 8th and 9th graders, they put over there in a big fanfare this year, big move, the new policy, new approach, moved them over there, and 3 months there, they're moving them back to McKinley School. And, like Northern, because of the breakdown there and the poisons, these kids will now lose 3 days of school because of poor planning. There's no excuse for that. They could have figured that out. I think maybe they're getting them out of there because there is some problems with safety at Southwestern. These two classes, the kids are young and they don't want them there. Well, the answer is not just to move them, but it is to solve the problem. And then, most recently, we have these new problems. And we allow them to persist. We allow them to fester when nobody does anything about it. We have a debt. First time in the history of the school district. And the auditors say they've really never seen this anyplace else. They have a debt of $3,800,000 this year. And you know what the new superintendent's remarks are in response to criticism for this? He said, well, I wasn't here when the budget was approved. He's been here 8 months while the budget is running. Is he saying he's never checked the budget to see if they're over or under? You can tell pretty well every 2 weeks when you pay salary whether it's over or under. So, he makes excuses. He doesn't step up to the plate and assume the responsibility. He did that when his application went in. His application was phony where it said he had a PhD. He blamed that on his wife. We can do better than this. We can do better than that. Now another new thing is we're allowing these administrators to come in without their credentials being checked. How do you think Milton's got away with saying he had a PhD when he didn't have one, or had 2 master's degrees, had all these things that were never checked, and some of them were clearly not true? Nobody checked. That's pretty serious. This guy could have come in here with a 7th grade education and nobody would know because they didn't check. And then you have a guy named Anthony coming in here claiming he has a master's degree because the position calls for a master's degree. He never got a master's degree. He has no master's degree. No one checked. No credentials were checked. And then he's allowed to hire this friend, and they don't do fingerprints. They don't, as the law requires fingerprints to check for people like Anthony, who turns out to be a pedophile. Now, it seems to me our children deserve better. You know, the bottom line is we have a dropout rate of about over 50%, and it's climbing. And there are districts in this country, primarily urban school districts, that have solved the problem. For example, in Baltimore, they had a dropout rate of about 60%. They changed the system. I don't know all the details, but I've read about it. They've changed the system where the dropout rate is now down to 10%. 90% of those kids are graduating, not 50%, 90%. And they're going on to college. You know, so when we look at this district, it's not that it can't be done, it's not being done. And that's what's happening here. Here's the bottom line. Do you think any of those white school districts I mentioned will allow this kind of inadequacy that's going on in the Flint schools to have happened in their districts? You know, credentials not checked, overlooking fingerprinting of potential hirees, continuing to allow incorrigibles to create violence in the schools, disrupt school classes. That's another thing here. Here we have suspension policy. Too many now, too few. They can't come together to figure out what the suspension policy is. Now, if a teacher has a disruptive school child in their class, she sends them to the office, they send them right back, and the kid goes in laughing, joking, he thinks it's funny. Here we have most of those kids in that class want to learn. They're not disruptive. We have some obligation to them. Get rid of those disruptive kids. I don't care how they do it. Put them in different classes and let them, you know, put them in rubber rooms or whatever the case is. But we have the first obligation of the kids that are not disruptive. But the question is, do you think these districts like Grand Blanc and Davis and Swartz Creek, you know, they obviously have some problems from time to time, but nothing like this. That's because their school district, their school boards, their parents, the students, the taxpayers will not permit it. We should have a school board installed here that will not permit it. This is what I mean by institutional racism. These deficiencies are primarily happening in this predominantly African American school district where history is dictating really a future contamination with past inadequacies. Why are we allowing that to happen? You know, the kids and the parents and the taxpayers demand better. Not with these built-in deficiencies of the past. Get rid of those. Let's start new. Let's make sure the kids have their equipment on time. Let's make the schools safe. Working with the police department. Working on getting liaison officers back in the schools. All of these things should be done. You know, if you allow these problems to continue unchallenged, You know, it's a suggestion. We are tied to the past and refuse to change and give our children the best opportunity to succeed. If we need money, we got to go get it. We got to look for other sources. We got to go to the foundation. The Mott Foundation has always been a big supporter of the Flint school system. About 10, 12 years ago, it eliminated its contribution to the district, $4 or $5 million. You know, some people say it was because of racism. I don't believe that. But that's, you know, what happened when the schools were turning from white to predominantly black. We're going to ask the foundation to help us get that money back. We have to go to other foundations. We have to come up with programs that we can get funded as test programs and whether they work or not. That's what Baltimore did. They got millions of dollars from all over the country. We got to be looking at this, and I don't think we are. And that's why we're going down. You know, allowing this dilemma to fester, we say our kids don't deserve the same opportunities that white kids are getting in the white districts. We can't allow that to happen. This is what you call institutional racism if we continue to allow these defects that have come to us from years and years before to continue to permeate our system, to continue to impact our children adversely. We can't allow that. But let's go on to the next subject here. This week the papers have been full of the allegations that Councilwoman Jackie Poplar had committed a extortion by demanding money from business people for the purpose of getting their license, their liquor license. If she didn't get the money, she indicated they won't get their license, so they gave her the money, and she justifies it by saying, I wanted it for scholarships. She was given $100 scholarships to 10 students at Northern High School. Well, that's certainly praiseworthy. The rest of it was not. And I think that, you see, if a person is entitled to a liquor license, whether it's in Genesee County or any place in the country, you can't put requirements on it that are not legal. In other words, if the law says you can refuse it because the person has a history of selling to minors or whatever, those are legal reasons you can. But you can't say to them, unless you give me money, you won't get your license. That's illegal. That's extortion. And that's what she was charged with here. Now what they did is they put her on what we call a diversion program. I'm familiar with it. We developed it here in Genesee County 35 years ago when I was prosecutor. And the program says if you don't commit a crime or violate any rules that we set up for you, over the next year the case will dismiss and you'll have no record. And I think in most cases that's okay. But the cases we had, and generally the general rule of thumb on diversion programs, and where you divert the case out of the regular system, put it into this other system, it was for nonviolent offenders. Never violent offenders, obviously, and never cases of public corruption. It sends the wrong message. Public corruption is serious. Now, the FBI has introduced a new wrinkle in this whole operation. It's called letter of apology for committing the crime. next they'll be saying if you commit a crime, if you can get a letter from your mother and she tells the feds that you had a very troubled childhood, they might give you a break on the crime. Where are we going with this thing? This really trivializes public corruption in my mind. Now, I don't think Jackie Poplar should go to jail. I mean, I like Jackie Poplar. She's a nice woman, and I wish she didn't do this, but we all make mistakes. But the question is, in the enforcement of the criminal law, one of the objectives is to create in people's minds not to do it. There should be a deterrence in what happens so that people won't do it in the future. Now, all you have to do is, first offense, and you do whatever you have to do. You just have to write a letter of apology. I don't think that's not going to be a very significant deterrent for other politicians not to do something. I don't know. Is that what's going on with the Smiley case out in Burton? You never heard anything about that. Are they just going to give a wave and a wink on that one too? This is not Poplar's fault. That is the soft landing she got here. The federal government giveth, she taketh away. If you're offering that, she'll take it. It's easier than being charged with a felony and possibly being exposed to going to jail. As I said, I don't think she should go to jail. But, this is not an unusual case here. Let me see if I can find it. Well, I had it. Well, anyway, here it is, right here. Here it is. This is, we were in Cleveland last week and found this paper and was reading it, and it's the Plain Dealer, the Cleveland Plain Dealer, one of the best newspapers in the country. It's quoted often around the country on different things. And it says, accusations fly in East Cleveland. Mayor is protecting inspector suspected of bribery. Two claim. And it goes on to say here, the fellow by the name of Hood was from East Cleveland school board member, and he was also a inspector. And anyway, it says here he was arrested Tuesday on suspicion of taking bribes, but was released Thursday. A police supervisor said Thursday that the bribery accusations remain under investigation. Hood did not return calls for comment. In a separate telephone interview, Ellington and Jenkins, these are the guys that did the investigation, said that Brewer did not act on the result of the investigation and accepted Hood's explanation that he was collecting money from business owners for high school fundraiser. It's the same thing. He got caught getting kickbacks. He was taking bribes as city code inspector, and he says, well, I was taking them for high school programs, charity programs. Same thing is here. These people, these council people, belong to what they call the municipal league. They have national conferences they go to and attend. They must have a workshop on how to con the feds into believing that when you take a kickback or you extort money, here's what you tell them. and they'll get you to write a letter of apology. You won't have to worry about being arrested and prosecuted. Cleveland, Flint, it's the same thing. I bet if you go around the country, you'll find that people who get busted for this type of activity, all telling the same story. Oh, well, it was for some charity and things like that. You know, I don't even know if there was any kind of an audit done on how much she raised. She says two people gave her $500 each in order to get their licenses. I don't have any doubt that she does spend money for projects. You know, we went to her Christmas party last year, and I'll bet there was 300-400 kids there and family. It was a big party, very successful, and she had a lot of things that were donated for the party. Now, I'm sure the people that donated them, hopefully they weren't people who were trying to get something from the city and they had to go through her. I think that most of them, probably all of them, were just well-intentioned, and at that time, Poplar was well-intentioned, and she put on a nice party. But you still can't do these things when the person is entitled to his license. He should get it without having to jump through hoops. Now here's the Channel 12 story on that. Can you play that, please?
Flint city leader has drawn the attention of those who she represents this weekend. On Friday, embattled Flint Councilwoman Jackie Poplar apologized in front of the TV cameras. And yesterday, the Second Ward Councilwoman said she's sorry in a local newspaper. But, as ABC 12's Kathy Shaffrin reports, people who live in the Second Ward are having mixed reactions.
In the printed apology, Poplar turns her attention to the two business owners who she coerced into paying $500 toward a scholarship fund in exchange for her voting on their liquor license. She acknowledges that, quote, my actions violated federal law because I had used the power of my public office to coerce contributions to the scholarship fund. She concludes the letter apologizing to the business owners and pledging to all persons that she will hereafter consider their request appropriately.
That's not acceptable. She shouldn't take money from businesses like that, even though it was for a good cause, but I don't think she should be taking money from them. She could have found a different way to raise money for it.
Reacting to her pronouncement in the paper, those in Poplar's Second Ward appeared disappointed with her actions. But while some council people are calling for her resignation, her constituents appear ready to accept the apology and move on.
I think they should make her resign for it. I just think she should know that that's not acceptable and she shouldn't do it again.
Maybe she should just go ahead and give her another chance, and maybe she might do something different because it was for a good cause.
She should have come up with a better plan than forcing them to give up the money, but I believe her intent was
Was a good one.
Yeah.
Not resignable.
No, not resignable. Not resignable.
That was ABC 12's Kathy Shaffrin reporting. Poplar is adamant that she will not resign. Instead, she will form a non-profit group to continue giving scholarships.
But I don't understand why she would even want to touch this again, talking about organizing a non-profit group. Is she still going to say to him, if you don't give to my non-profit group, you won't get your license, or I won't help you with zoning? You know what? She ought to just back away from all of this right now, because it just smells bad. I don't know whether she'd do anything wrong in the future, but it's just the appearance that the only thing that's changed in many people's minds is that she's going to make it a non-profit now and try to make it appear more legal. The issue is, whether it's non-profit or not, you don't ask people for money, for licenses, zoning change, whatever, and that doesn't necessarily have to change because you've got a non-profit, and the result is you could be committing more crimes. I'm not suggesting she will. I don't know that she would. I'm inclined to think she wouldn't. but she has to recognize there is an appearance that the impropriety is continuing, but with a little more legal protection. And she says, well, I don't know, I didn't know I was doing wrong. Well, we know, and we've talked to people, and apparently these business owners had told her it was wrong. Well, we talked to people who said they told her it was wrong before she did it. So I'm inclined to think she knew it was wrong, but she was going to do it because she thought it was all right because she was giving the money to scholarships. Unfortunately for her, that's not acceptable. Now here's the other issue in this case. There is a counsel dilemma here. Here is the counsel after she had been exposed and charged. Some people say she wasn't charged. Well, she had to be charged. She had to make the deal. Well, she would have been charged formally, so she made a deal. While this was going on, in the middle of all this, where she admitted she extorted the money, the city council people, except for, I think, Councilman Gonzalez, that really had it right, they're praising her. They're praising her. What's that tell you about the rest of the council? I don't know if everyone did, but they showed some tapes of various members praising her for being a good councilwoman. I don't know what their criteria is for that. Well, the point is, she's admitted a public corruption. And then, on the other hand, the dilemma they're in, they're making an effort to remove Don Williamson from office on allegations, no charges, just allegations that he's guilty of, I guess, corruption. They sent it to the Attorney General, and I'll tell you, the Attorney General is going to do nothing on this case. He's going to look at it and say, this is nothing but a political peeing match. He's not going to get involved in it. He may write a report or what have you, but he's not going to he's not going to arrest some people on this. First, because I heard a lot of that evidence, it wasn't there. I don't think they have evidence there. It's this guy saying one thing and then 5 other people on this side saying another thing. I'll bet there won't be any action taken. But the question is, how can the council justify ignoring the popular case and then proceeding against Williamson? It kind of plays into the hands of Williamson that this is nothing but a political hatchet job. Now, I believe, in my mind, that Williamson violated some of the laws. I think he did use people in his wife's campaign. How much, I don't know. But the council wasn't able to establish that. I'm not a supporter of Williamson. I've been very critical of him. I'm still going to be critical of him. But in all fairness, how can the council justify this dual approach, one to one of theirs, nothing going to be done, and one to their opposition, who's even less involved in the sense that there's allegations only and no established crime? How can they justify that in the public's mind, that they're doing the right thing? Well, we'll see. And there has been, at last Monday's meeting, Poplar was one of them, Sims, all very critical of Williamson and his wife's campaign and what have you, and that he should be removed from office, and they were touting that and sending it to the Attorney General. And that's really hypocrisy if I've ever seen it. especially on the people like Poplar and others who knew what her situation was, and just ignoring it until it came out this past the latter part of the week. Now, you know, in tough situations, you always have to admire a person or persons who take the unpopular path. Here, the unpopular path with the council who want to get rid of Williamson, and they're after him. Now, one of the guys who's been a leader in that is Scott Kincaid. But, you know, I have to admire him for being kind of a statesman-like person last week, showing his impartiality when one of the key people that the council is after to try to show this participation, required participation by city employees in Patsy Lou Williamson's campaign. And I might say I can't believe she was even aware of this if it was happening. But was Scott Kincaid. And one of the people they zeroed in on was Bob Cook, who was the park director, where a lot of this revolved around. I don't think they proved anything against Bob Cook, but Scott Kincaid did take the position. He thought Bob Cook was doing a good job. The words to that effect. Now, I'm sure he didn't make his cohorts on the council or his friends in the audience who were after Williamson happy with that, but he did what he thought was the right thing, and I have to commend him for that. So it's not all one way. There are people down there on that council that I think want to do a good job and are admirable people, and hopefully they'll do what's right rather than what's political. So you really, what it comes down to on the bottom line is that there's really a couple issues here. Should a case of corruption be forgiven with a letter of apology? What message does that send? Does it trivialize the seriousness of the case? And I guess that's what we're talking about here. And you have to ask, where is this going to stop? And maybe you ought to send Abby home to get a letter from his mother, father, somebody. What a troubled childhood he had, and therefore he should be given a pass. And then you have the council's dilemma of going after Williamson when their own member has admitted they are guilty of public corruption, to wit, extortion. I don't know whether she should resign or not. I told you I like the woman. I think she, in most cases, well-intentioned. She was not here, but. And then you have the other question is Williamson's comments about things to come. Here's what the Journal said about this thing in an editorial. It says Poplar was wrong. That's the editorial, and it says just because the money didn't line her own pockets doesn't make her action excusable or legal. Poplar should have known this, but she claims she didn't realize that using her position to extort contributions was wrong. I'm saying to you that she knew they were wrong. We've talked to people who, before it happened, told them it was wrong. An explanation, as explanations go, this one is less than reassuring. Indeed, the entire mea culpa, with Poplar surrounding herself with supporters, smacked of someone not fully appreciating the transgressions or showing sincere remorse. She had a press conference and had all her friends around her cheering her and, making comments to the press that they don't think anything was wrong and things like that. And then it goes on to say, we like to believe that this will be the end of the government shenanigans, but if Mayor Donald Williamson is correct, this bit of corruption is just the tip in the iceberg. Now, we've heard about the allegations he's made about the pensions and things like that. Well, retirement review on this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 people that he claims have been overpaid, and it totals out to $365,000. Now, he tries to tie it to some of the council people, that they did this as favors, or whatever favors they got for it. I don't have any evidence of that, and I don't know if it's just something that is exaggerated or overblown. But, we're going to have to wait and see. He's pretty sure that there's going to be other people that are going to be charged, but we're not there yet. But let me quickly go to two other stories that we have. The Star Chambers has been reintroduced in Mayor Charles Smiley's case in the city of Burton. You remember, if you remember your history, this was a Royal English court. It was abolished in the 1600s, notorious for its secret sessions and for its harsh and arbitrary judgments and its use of torture to force confessions. I mean, it was so despised, it was thrown out and followed by the English common law that was the antithesis of everything the Star Chamber stood for. Now, the common law guaranteed fairness in criminal law, and that's what we operate with in this country today. And it included the concept of due process, being charged, facing your charges, knowing what they are. And all of this was apparently forgotten in Burton. He's obviously forgotten that America was founded on the English common law, so that a person could only be charged with a crime after he is said to have violated some law. The law had to be constitutional and fair. In this particular case, he is charged. He had his president, his city council president, Charles Cross, a frequent critic of Smiley, because Smiley made a criminal complaint against him for going to two city employees in the clerk's office without Smiley's permission. These are city employees, and politely, and there's no dispute about this, politely asking for minutes of the previous council meetings. They're kept in the clerk's office. Any public person or any private person could do that. There is no question in my mind, and other fair-minded people, that Smiley's action was political reprisal for Cross's criticism of Smiley and his administration since Cross became president of the council. Is that what we stand for in this country, in this county, in this community? That someone like this could be arrested on such a phony charge, taking politics into the courts? Here's what Smiley does. As part of this conspiracy to get an opponent using the criminal laws, he hires an attorney who is loyal to him. He's worked with him before, and it's his attorney. A guy named Jack Belcher, whom I know and like. But it gives the impression something further is wrong here. He's now got his own attorney in there to prosecute Charlie Cross. Charlie Cross is a guy who was president of the council when the issue of the city attorney came up about 8 months ago. And Jack Belcher was a candidate for that, and Cross had turned him down. He refused to go along with him. So he has an axe to grind, it would appear. He should really disqualify himself. I don't know if he'll be unfair, but the appearance is there. And then he puts in as judge Richard Hughes, who is one of his cohorts, is one of his supporters, who was a member of the Smiley team. And he's deciding the case. The case has been before him now 3 or 4 times on motion to dismiss. Clearly should be dismissed in my mind because of the violation of the constitutional rights of Cross, free speech. This item would seem to indicate that if you say hello or goodbye to a council member during the day, you may violate. If you don't ask Smiley first, you may be in violation of the law. That's how ridiculous this provision in the charter is. It's unconstitutional, but he won't pass on it. Now, this case comes up again this coming Thursday. It's going to be interesting to see what's done here. But in the meantime, I didn't get to the subject. I will do it next week because it is an important case, and that is that the issue of the ambulance service, the fact that it's now become a political football, and that people may very well be dying in our community. We know that for a fact. It happened once. We followed a case up that had happened where private ambulances refused to go into an area to pick up a man's wife who was having a heart attack, and it took an hour, 50 minutes to an hour to get an ambulance there finally. And when she got to the hospital, she had passed. And that's what's happening in this county with all these ambulances. And we want to talk about that and what this sheriff deputy did to help a wounded fellow officer that I think really is the crux of this whole problem. But we'll discuss that next week. In the meantime, we'll be at the White Horse.